So it's all about trying to see the light at the end of the tunnel through different experiences, because like learning experiences and being adult now, I see where that adult was coming from as a kid, but how
Right.
he could have approached it differently. And it's just so interesting when you look back on certain situations where you were like, okay, this was bad, but then you get some good out of it too. I don't know. It's weird, but life is weird and life is very complicated. So you have to juggle all of these different things. And that's why people don't want to think about this stuff, and they
Yeah.
just want to
Yeah.
repress it. I mean, let's be honest about it. It's easier to repress the trauma. It's easier to step things in and only blow up every once in a while. But that's not the longevity of
No.
happiness. You have
No.
to continue working on things so you can have that longevity of loving yourself, loving others to where you can be okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Everything's Okay, a mental health podcast brought to you by the one and only Crazy Ant Media. We're super excited about today because it's going to be a lot of unboxing. It's going to be a lot of bringing out old situations that we still, deal with on an everyday basis. Today's episode is titled Trauma. So you only know we're going to go deep and dive into our past situations, some we may be proud of, some we may not be proud of overcoming, and all of the different things. But this podcast is all about healing and confronting and being able to get over that hump, and being able to have those different experiences that turn you into who you are today. So it's a very interesting topic. It's a very deep topic because a lot of trauma surrounds a lot of death, and both of us, Dustin and myself, we've had a lot of death in both of our
Yeah.
lives. So
Yeah.
that's been very traumatic. But it's almost more traumatic when bad situations happen to you with people who are still alive, because you still have to confront them on like a however daily basis, monthly basis, whatever, what have you. Or when trauma is induced by someone you still love and still care about dearly. So there's so many different aspects that we can approach it with this, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I don't even know when we were talking about this subject and like, oh yeah, let's do a show on this. I'm like, Jesus, I could spend like 18 hours, 24 hours talking about trauma in my life. There have definitely been some traumatic events in my life that have definitely guided me, and some I've kind of moved from, and others I'm still dealing with, and then yet again others that I thought I had moved from and healed from and really haven't. And so I feel like you said, when we do these shows and just in our everyday lives, when we have our conversations and we talk and stuff, there are moments when you realize, something will come up and you're like, oh, I thought I had moved past that, but I guess maybe I haven't, and maybe I need to work on that again, kind of a thing. So there's definitely been those in life, but yeah, I think if we're gonna start it off, right? Like you said, I feel like early on the most traumatic event in my life was the loss of my father, and
Hmm.
boy, did that steamroll into a whole lot of trauma. um, it was really difficult. If you guys have been listening to these shows and our episodes in the past, and if not, highly recommend you go back and listen to the first couple where we talk about death and grief and loss. But that event in itself was really hard. I had a really hard time dealing with it. I still don't deal with death very well. That's one of the things I still have to work with on a daily basis, and do the work and try to figure out how I can move past that, or learn to cope with it better than I do. But that event kind of shook up the family a little bit, and so it wasn't long after that. And the reason I brought that up because it was a traumatic event, but it leads to another traumatic event that like really kind of shook my life early. And that's not long after the death, maybe a year or so after the death. We moved suddenly. We just up and left our home. And when I say our home, we had just bought a new home, like bought a new house. It was in a new, but it was just a sudden, quick, hey, we're moving and we're getting out of here. We're going to Florida. Florida? We don't even know anybody in Florida. Why are we going to Florida? Like, what are we doing? So you can imagine as an 8-year-old kid who just went through losing his dad, just through, trying to figure out mom's working now. She's trying to, so we have babysitters and like just trying to figure out the whole dynamic of where life is at this point and already trying to deal with that. And then to go, hey, out of here. We're going to a strange place in a strange town in a strange state where you don't know anybody and we don't and we're just going to go. And so, yeah, that was pretty traumatic. And it was definitely and you guys, if you don't know, I'm not the me I am now. So I was a very shy, withdrawn, introverted kid. I did not talk to anybody unless I was spoken to. I didn't try to put myself into social situations. I had one best friend. His name was Gary. He was the next door neighbor. And maybe another friend here, another friend there, Mark and a couple other people. But for the most part, it was just me and Gary. And so, oh, wait, now you're taking me away from Gary, the one person I can talk to, the one person I have. You're taking me away from that, and you're moving me someplace. And so school was not fun for me early on anyway, because like I said, I didn't socialize. I didn't have a lot of friends. I wasn't open. I didn't communicate. And so now you're taking me and you're putting me into that situation again, where I have to acclimate into a new school and try to make new friends and guys, when you move to the South and you're a Yankee, you're already at a disadvantage because they don't like Yankees. Here comes a Northerner into the South. It's and so I'm trying to make light of it, but it was a very traumatic situation for me and my sister. And not so much for my little brother because he was 1. So he's well, whatever. He became a Florida baby, a Southern baby. He got the tan. He was a Southerner. He didn't know the North. But so you can imagine. So that event in my life really it shook it up, and then you settle in, right? You settle in after that. You're okay, well, this is life. This is what we're doing. And then it led to another traumatic event when we had settled in, and I found my voice late, but I have a brother. I love him dearly. His name is John. He was he helped me immensely come out of my shell. It was really his friendship that really made me find myself to where I could start talking and feeling like I could be who I am supposed to be eventually down the line. Still wasn't this, but I was there. And we're set. We have a group of friends, me and my sister. We have a really tight-knit group of friends. We're good in school. We're figuring out life. We're rocking and rolling. And we're getting ready to start high school. And we move again. Oh, nope, sorry, we're out of here. I know you guys got friends. I know you're excited about high school. You got everything rolling and rocking and rolling, but we're going back to New York. What? Wait, what? And there you go. We're up back to New York. So again, thrown into another okay, well, now I have to start high school in a place I don't know with people I don't know. I have all my friends are in Florida. I don't know, and then we're trying to figure it out again. And so it's what do we do? How do we adapt to this? And the one thing that was good for me, because it's very traumatic just doing this. And keep in mind, I'm still young. At that point, I'm 14, about to be 15, right? So at 8, boom. At 14, boom. And we're whoa. I had a twin. I have a twin sister. So I've always got a built-in friend, right? I've always got that built-in person that's always with me, and we're trying to figure it out together. We're going through it together. And then a year later, we move again. And this time we go to Louisiana. Again, to where, like, why are we going to Louisiana? We don't have family there. We don't have friends. What made you choose Louisiana? So again, it's uprooted. And we didn't really have that time to make friends because we were there such a short period of time. So we end up in Louisiana. And now, let me say this. It's all very traumatic. It definitely played a role in my mental health and even more so pulling back in and retreating and trying to hide basically from life. But I don't regret any of the moves because I did make some lifelong friends and family. And the move to Louisiana, I met my people. I met people who would now genuinely be my family that aren't blood and have been there my whole life. And John also in Florida, same thing. John and Marie in Florida, same thing. And I found my place. Louisiana was my place. This is where I felt at, like, I can be me here. And it's the place that I've spent the most of my life, the majority of my life. It's very comfortable. I consider it home. I was born in New York, but I consider Louisiana home. So I don't regret any of it. Not that I had a choice in any of it when you're that young. We were going where I was told to go. But it was very traumatic. So there you go. I can't wait to hear what your early traumatic stuff was. But mine was a death in the family and then boom, 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 boom. 3 quick moves out of nowhere to try to reestablish life after death. And to say that it made it very difficult sometimes, well, that would be an understatement. And I'm thankful that I had my twin to ride or die with through all that. Because I think if I was alone and it was just me and the little bro, who, at that point, like I said, 1 on the first move, and even by the second move was only like 7. So you're not really, you don't have that partner there, like, yet. We get there, obviously, if you know the history of me and my brother, but not yet. And so thank God I had a ride or die, because I don't know if I would have, like, survived all that if she wasn't there. Like, we were just looking at each other going, what the fuck?
I think a lot of trauma comes from instability. And I mean, especially a lot of both of our trauma, because I mean, we still deal with that now. We unintentionally put ourselves in unstable situations just because that's what we're used to. So it's always very interesting to try to navigate and balance that side of your life and your decision making, because there's so many different things. You feel like you're doing the right thing, but then other thing presents itself and you think that's the right thing. And of course, there's no handbook for this thing we call life.
No.
So you're just trying to make the best situation out of a bad product. But I mean, you try to just figure it out as you go. But I mean, I think in some regard, everybody is unstable, or everybody's situation is unstable, I should say. But yeah, I mean, from the very early age, I think trauma, I mean, domestic violence. I mean, I've seen so much of that growing up, to where, I've had to, not that I am any sort of whatever, like, I'll admit I have anger problems, or at least had anger problems before working on them and going to therapy and things like that. But I always knew not to get to that point. But I mean, when that's all you see growing up, you think that's how you're supposed to argue. You think yelling is how you're supposed to argue and not having a conversation. The big blow-ups are supposed to be the norm, but they're not. It's not normal. That's not how it's supposed to be. So anger problems were normal. Short fuses were normal. I didn't realize that was a problem until my stepfather came in the picture, and he's all cool Joe, calm, cool, collected. So I'm like, oh, this is a different approach to life. Like, let's definitely use this way, because he seems way happier and way less stressed than anyone else. But yeah, I would say, when I was probably in kindergarten, it was an in-between time where my parents, they were always on again, off again, on again, off again, cheating on each other if they got into an argument. Like, that's just how they dealt with stuff. They were young, they were dumb, they admit that stuff now. It's great for them to just, admit that they were stupid. So that shows some growth. But anyway, I remember being in like kindergarten, and I was going to be Jeff Gordon for Halloween. And if y'all don't know who that is, it's a NASCAR driver. I grew up in Speedway, Indiana, so racing's a big thing. And my dad was bringing me back over to my mom's so that he could pick up my Halloween costume, and he finds her with another man. So that turns into a whole big thing. Again, domestic violence, Amir gets punched, his can gets cut, police get called, to the point where I remember we leave my mom's house. I'm with my dad, and we go to his work, I believe, and he's cleaning up his hand, blood all in the sink. And then he realizes, oh shit, like the cops probably got called, things are gonna get escalated, and all of these different things. So he drops me off with my uncle, who then returns me back to my mom. And then when I get back to my mom's house, there's cops everywhere. They're taking pictures of the scene because it's a crime scene. And it's a traumatic event to where things are overlaying. And I'm like I said, like 6 or 7 years old. And then that leads into, the other forms of domestic violence that I've experienced in my life with, some siblings' parents who may or may not have met my parents through substance usage, hardcore substance usage, to where, like, I remember being in fourth grade and seeing to what was my stepdad at the time, bending my mom over the kitchen counter and choking her and saying, I'm going to kill you. So, I mean, there's all of these different things that happen as far as trauma that you can still look back on. And it's a very clear picture. Like in both of those situations, more with the stepdad at the time situation rather than my real father when I was so young. But I look back at that stepdad situation where when I was in fourth grade and just like, I wish I could have done more. Like she handed me the phone to tell me to go outside to call the police, and I just couldn't do it because I was so in such a emotional distress to where I couldn't remember our address and things
Yeah.
like that, and to where I feel guilty for being in that place and not remembering the address and like all of these different things. And it's crazy how distinctively you remember stuff like that, and how like you remember how the whole play, the whole dramatic event plays out to where the cops do come, I don't go to school the next day, all of these different things. So yeah, to be able to talk about that more openly and more freely. I mean, it's a hardcore subject matter. I
It
mean,
is.
you don't want to start these conversations out of nowhere,
No.
but I mean, to be able to, I mean, open up about those things and not let that have any power, I feel like is the one of the strongest things someone can do in their life to where they can move past it, or at least, if you're put in a dramatic situation, hopefully not like that, but if you're put in a dramatic situation to where you can act and not feel like that little kid again. So those are kind of the first initial trauma incidents that I can remember
So I
specifically.
I wanna talk about the bad temper and anger issues, because me too. And
Yeah.
I feel like that is a defense mechanism that goes up when you feel
Hmm.
like you're in danger or you are angry, and you're forced to put on the mask and pretend everything is fine, but you're really angry. And since you're hiding that anger, the moments where it's released happen. And I definitely went through that. Now your mother-in-law can wholeheartedly probably tell you when I would get angry. I had a really bad anger issue, and I was violent. I did punch holes in walls and break things, and became very terrifying to people. And it was my way to retake control of the situation. I thought, right? I thought, well, I'm not happy. Nobody's doing what I want. Nobody's asking me what I want. I need to be in control. Here comes holy hell. I'm bringing down on everybody. I'm just going to be angry and you're going to know it. But when you get into those shouting matches, like you said, and then you're in a shouting match with your mother or your sister, and you throw a punch right by them and smash a hole in the wall, and your little brother's looking at it going, what the fuck? You don't realize what you're doing to the people around you when you're
causing
exhibiting
trauma,
that cause. Like you said, with your dad doing that when you were a kid, it was in the same situation where I was the dad, I was the older brother, I was the one, and he's seeing this behavior and he's seeing me treat people like that. And that's a very scary thing. And I'll be honest with you, I was very nervous about bringing that into relationships. I was. I thought, God, am I going to be an abuser? Am I going to like smack somebody around who I get upset at?
You get scared of yourself.
You get scared of yourself, right? And then another wall goes up, right? Yeah. Now you're not wanting to get into a relationship. Or if you're in a relationship, you're extremely guarded and you're not sharing and you're not talking because you're terrified. Well, if I say something that I'm unhappy about and it starts an argument, I might swing. And so you start avoiding situations and you start avoiding conversations in fear of letting the anger go, which in itself builds the anger. Because you're pissed and can't say it. And you're like, so it's, and I hate to say it, but even I never hit anybody. I never, not who I shouldn't. Put it that way. I got into some fights. But I never hit anybody I shouldn't hit. I never hit siblings. I never hit my mom. I never hit my wife. I never hit. But there were moments when I would get angry and it was there. And I remember even just near towards the end of my marriage, there was a moment where it was a very heated back and forth, and she smacked the fuck out of me, rightfully so, because I was being a major dick. But she smacked the fuck out of me, and I knew in that I've got to get the fuck out of the house right now because I'm gonna do something I can't ever take back. And and so I'm always grateful that you're a good person. You know who you are. And so that trigger kicks in. Get out. You're not that guy. Get out of the house right now before you become that person, right? Kind of a thing. And so, I'm glad you brought it up because I think with what you went through early on, we very different youths with our trauma, but the same result. Something that happened to us forced us to be withdrawn and unhappy, and I think that's where the anger stems from, right? Because when you're really not happy and you just keep building that animosity, and at some point it has to come out on somebody, and you don't mean to have it come out on the people that it comes out on, because most of the time your target isn't the one that it should be coming out at, but it does. And so that has been a thing that it took me a very long time to figure out. Why am I like this? What is causing this? Right. That was a lot of work, like you said, with therapy, with talking with people, with sitting down and having conversations about why am I so angry? Why do I take out my anger in this type of a way? How can I do better? How can I step back and let that go? And be like, sometimes and I'm happy to say that I am at that point now where I don't get really angry anymore. Do I get upset? Of course I do. Do I yell a little bit? Of course I do. But I'm not at that angry point anymore. I don't let that anger build up anymore. It's just like, okay, I'm upset by this. I'm going to say that I'm upset by this, and then I'm going to move on, right?
Right.
And the other thing is, and you could talk about this too, because we talk about this, is knowing your worth and putting boundaries where boundaries need to be. Like, I know this upsets me, so I am setting a boundary, and I am not going
Right.
to allow this to upset me. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you have to take yourself away from a situation, if you have to take yourself away from a person, or whatever the incident might be that is causing something that is not good for you, it is okay to set those boundaries and say, this is not okay. And I'm not going to allow this to be in my life, right? So, I mean, because sometimes you have to
Yeah.
do that to avoid trauma.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to set boundaries within yourself because I think
Yes.
one of the hardest things to do is to not be in control, to not be a control freak. I
Yes.
mean, because that is the tiny ledge that people tip over all the time. They feel like they have to be in control of the entire situation because that way they're protecting themselves, but in return they're actually hurting the people around
Exactly.
them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the control factor is just bad all the way
All
around
the way.
because like I said, it's supposed to be a protective wall for yourself, but you're hurting others, and it's just one of those things to where you feel like you can't find the balance, but you have. I think conversation and just breathing and meditating and getting through situations is definitely one of the biggest things because I mean you start to go down paths to where you don't even realize that you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like for examples, another like kind of traumatic event, but it was coming from a good place. But it's still one of those things where I'm like, what the fuck? I was in junior high and I remember being in seventh grade and I really looked up to this kid that was in eighth grade who was kind of a not good kid. Like he was always getting in trouble doing things, but I
Yeah.
thought he was like super cool.
Yeah.
One of my teachers saw me hanging out with him in between classes, blah, blah, blah. And I walk away and I start to walk towards class, and I didn't even realize the teacher was watching me the whole time. So then he comes out of nowhere. I feel like it was nowhere, but he comes like diagonal, basically like pushes me against the wall and is like, "What are you doing?" And it's like it's a traumatic positive experience because you see that you have somebody looking out for you, but I'm like, bro, why are you putting your hands on me? Like,
Right.
it's one of
Right.
those things where it's like I have mixed feelings about that situation. And it's like, him and I never really had a close relationship. Like I said, he was one of my teachers for like a study hall or whatever. But I mean, it was nice to know that somebody was looking out for me, but
Right.
the traumatic experiences putting your hands on me. You didn't need to do that because I mean that makes me want to rebel even more
Right.
to where like I feel like, fuck the establishment. Like that type of thing. Like so it's all about trying to see the light at the end of the tunnel through different experiences because like learning experiences and being adult now, I see where that adult was coming from as a kid, but
Right.
how he could have approached it differently. And it's just so interesting when you look back on certain situations where you were like, okay, this was bad, but then you get some good out of it too. I don't know. It's weird, but life is weird and life is very complicated. So you have to juggle all of these different things. And that's why people don't want to think about this stuff
Yeah.
when they just
Yeah.
want to repress it. I mean, let's be honest about it. It's easier to repress the trauma. It's easier to stuff things in and only blow up every once in a while. But that's not the longevity of
No.
happiness. You
No.
have to continue working on things so you can have that longevity of loving yourself, loving others to where you can be okay. And it's hard, man.
Because look, this is the reality of life. This is the reality of the universe. Whatever, you can't have light without darkness.
It's true. Yin
Chaos
and
and
yang.
you have to have it in order to balance. And sometimes to have a happy life, you have to go back to the dark spots and work through it. You
And
have
work
to.
through
You
it.
can't repress it. You can't hide it. You can't pretend it doesn't exist because it does exist. It's a part of you. And you
Hmm.
need that darkness for your light to exist. So you have to every now and then, even though you think you might have already done it, clearly if something is still not right, you haven't finished it yet, you haven't done it yet, and you need to go back. And that's a scary thing. To go back to a dark place in your life or a bad moment in your life is a scary thing. but it's a
Well, just like the
necessary.
control situation, like you have to realize your control triggers so that you can avoid those control triggers. Like
Yes.
you have to remember the darkness so that you can go towards the light.
And
It's spirituality part two, people.
yes, yes. And I'll tell you, like, so another really traumatic thing in my life that has dictated so much and probably is the reason for the demise of my marriage and so many other relationships is abandonment. From the
Oh
moment
yeah.
I lost my dad, right? And then I lost friends because of the moves. I lost my little brother. I had to give up my beloved dog. I had to, but with the dad, okay, the next big abandonment I had in my life is my first true love of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a sudden abrupt I'm just not there anymore with no explanation, no. And so I started having real problems with abandonment. I thought everybody was leaving me. Nobody wanted to be with me. Why am I not good enough? Why is everybody, not want to be with me? Why? And some of those abandonments, not by, like somebody dying is not in your control. There's like nothing but someone leaving you is. It's like, why did they leave me? Why did they say all these things and then not follow through? Why did they walk away from me? And those abandonments, and then reinforced with the death of the brother and reinforced with, I started putting up, no doubt about it. And I'm just now processing and realizing and doing the work right now to figure this out. But I started putting up giant fucking walls, like House of Dragon, Game of Thrones, fucking epic castle walls, right? You are not getting in to hurt me. I'm not going to let you close enough to hurt me. And because I don't want you, if you leave, then I don't care because you never got close enough for me to feel that, right? But by doing that, I was forcing the abandonment. I was pushing the people away that I wanted to stay without even realizing that I'm doing it. It was a protection factor. It was all about keeping me safe. But in the end, I was hurting myself by forcing people that I loved and who loved me out of my life. And by not sharing, by not communicating, by not talking properly, by trying to be in control when I wasn't in control, by all these defense mechanisms to keep myself safe from being abandoned caused me to be abandoned. And that's a really hard thing to deal with. That's when you start doing the work and you start doing the, like, okay, I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to start talking. I'm going to start journaling. I'm going to start doing all these things to take that hard, deep look inside, because then you have to own and you have to realize you are a flawed individual. You were abandoned because of something you did. You have to own that. You have to take fault with that and say, because it's easy to put the blame somewhere else. You did this. You did that. It's all your fault. It was, why did you do this? You're the evil person in this. But then you have to start digging deeper about, okay, maybe this person did do that. But why did they? Were you a cause of them doing something? Were you, or was it not anything? You have to start to look at those things. And so when you, like we were just talking about, when you have to retreat back and look at your own darkness and go, shit, did that cause this? And that's a really hard thing to do, to own up, saying I am a flawed individual. I make mistakes, and these mistakes, which I thought were right to do at the time, hurt me. They caused me grief. They caused me trauma. And that's the reason I'm saying all that, is because sometimes trauma is from outside. Sometimes it's from in. Sometimes you cause your own trauma without even realizing that you're doing it, which is why this work is so necessary, which is why these conversations are so necessary. Because if you don't talk about it, if you don't reflect, if you don't write down in the journal, you don't take that hike and clear your mind, you don't, whatever your process is, if you don't do that, that it stays with you. It eats you up. It keeps, and so Yeah, man. I think, and I don't know which is worse for me, the outside trauma or the self-induced trauma. They've both been pretty fucking awful. But
Yeah,
you
and it's
know,
like they almost work hand in hand
they
too
do.
because you
I'm
feel
not
like,
sure what you're trying to edit.
well, thank you, Siri, or Alexa, whichever one. But yeah, it's like they almost work hand in hand because, like, if a traumatic experience happens externally, you think that you're supposed to cause yourself internal trauma.
Exactly.
Like, okay, my dad is ignoring me and doesn't want to see me. What's wrong with me? What did I do?
Right.
That type of stuff. And, that's always been a thing for me too. I think that's why I'm such a people pleaser because I have so many different abandonment issues as well, to where, like, even if I feel like I'm not being my true self, wearing a mask or like fibbing a little bit about something that will play better in my favor in certain situations with different people, like, I just want to do that so these people can like me. And I've learned that that ends up hurting me in the long run because you try to keep up with all of these little white lies that aren't that big of a deal because these people actually like you and genuinely enjoy you for you, but you feel like you have to be this different person, and it's because it's trauma, basically, just coming out of it, just trying to figure out your own life and be who you are and realizing that people love you for who you are. I think that's the biggest thing, but it's hard, man. I mean, it's nothing that you get over overnight. I
No,
mean,
no.
it's something that you live with every single day, and I mean, it's gonna sprout anxiety, it's gonna sprout depression in the most random times, the most inconvenient times.
Without doubt.
But I mean, it's one of those things where you have to continue to deal with it, continue doing the work, and that's the biggest thing. You can't be lazy about yourself. You
No,
can't be
no.
lazy about your mental health because
You
if you do, you fall into a depression, which leads to so many different unfortunate outcomes. So it's all about staying positive and moving
well,
forward.
I,
And it's,
I
yeah,
love what you just said. It's not a one and done thing. You have to do the work every single day. It's an
yeah,
everyday thing for the rest of your life. You've got to do the work, and you you just have to. And I think touching just briefly on what you said, the moment that you realize it doesn't matter what other people think about you. It doesn't matter if they like you or not. It only matters, do you love yourself? Are you
right.
happy with yourself? Are you being true to you? The moment you realize that, things get so much easier because the
They do.
people pleasing does stop. You realize, I'm just going to be me, and if you don't like me, that's okay. That's on you. That's not on me. Where when you're in that people pleasing, it's a trap. It's like, oh no, they don't like me, so I have to do something to make them like me or love me. I have to do
Right.
that. And the second, it's like an escapism. It's like a freedom. It's like a thing lifted
It
off
is.
you when you realize it doesn't matter if they like you or not. It only matters that you like yourself and that you're being true. I saw a term yesterday. One of my friends shared a term, and it was radically authentic.
Mm,
If you live your life radically authentic, you will be a happy individual. Because it's all about being true to yourself and regardless, in the most radical way. So, what that might seem crazy to some might seem normal to others. But if it's authentic and it is genuinely you, then that's all that counts. And that's where you're going to be the happiest in life. That's how you avoid more trauma. That's how you avoid causing more trauma for somebody else. Just be you, just be authentic and do what you do. And I feel like that's how we just move and groove in life, man. Be authentic, be you, do you, and then let the rest fall into place. And it goes all the way back to what you said at the very beginning of this thing is we're not in control.
yeah.
It's an illusion to think that we have any control over where we're going or what we're doing. We're just on the path momentarily in a brief amount of time in this universe, and we just do what we're supposed to do. And every now and then we try to shake that up, and then that's like we're reminded, no, you're not in control. So, it's, woo, what a ride, man. What a ride.
What a ride, that thing called life, man. But it's all about staying true to yourself and staying true to others. Just, put yourself first. It's not selfish to do that.
Yeah.
It's okay to do that. It's very important because if you're okay, then you'll be strong enough to help everybody else around you to where they're okay. So,
Yeah.
not that you have to do that, but you love these people, but you have to take care of yourself first. That is the biggest thing. And to always remember that everything's okay.